President Clinton, to his credit, sent 2 carrier strike groups and a Marine amphibious ready group. I was an infantry officer on that Marine amphibious ready group. We were, no kidding, into Taiwan Strait, telling the Chinese, like, hey, don't even think about it today. If you do it, you're going to be toast. Your amphibious invasion force will be at the bottom of the ocean. And so now I'm back out, kind of bookends of my career, doing it again out in that region. So it really helps my day job in terms of national security issues and just knowing, right? I know these officers, I know these troops. When you have, members kind of ripping into them, oh, they're not warriors and things like that. That's not right. This is the most combat tested, combat experienced generation of military officers since World War II, and I'm proud to serve alongside them.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of American Potential. It's Veterans Day this week, and we honor and celebrate our veterans. For the week leading up to Veterans Day, we've had veterans on the show that are currently serving in Congress. And today's guest is a little different because he's a U.S. Senator and a colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve. Now, he started his military journey in 1993, and he took on a variety of command and staff positions in both active duty and the reserves. In 2004, he returned to active duty for a year and a half, during which he served as a staff officer to General John Abizaid, the commander of the U.S. Central Command. Then, in July 2013, he was once again summoned to active duty, this time as part of a joint task force operating in Afghanistan. His mission was to focus on the crucial tasks of dismantling terrorist networks and combating the insurgency led by the Taliban. Now, beyond his military career, he's held multiple positions in government, including serving as Alaska's Attorney General and Commissioner of the Alaska Department of Natural Resources. I want to welcome United States Senator Dan Sullivan from the great state of Alaska. Well, Senator Sullivan, thanks for being with us.
Hey, Jeff, great to be on the show, and looking forward to getting home to Alaska on Veterans Day. And my state, we have more veterans per capita than any state in the country, so this is a really big, important weekend for all our veterans and families.
Alaska has the biggest of everything. I know you try and compete with Texas. No, let me say it differently. Texas tries to compete with Alaska, right? But they can't do it. I mean, you're just too big.
I love Texas. I'm good friends with Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, but I do mention it, maybe more than they like. But we have a saying in Alaska, if you cut Alaska in half, then Texas would be the 3rd largest state in the country. So, it's true.
It is true.
I'm not sure they think that, but anyways, it's true.
I love Alaska. It's one of my absolute favorite states, and to anyone who's not been there, they should go visit.
Yeah,
Alaska.
you got to come up. All your listeners, everybody watching, you got to come up. You'll love it. You'll have the trip of a lifetime. I guarantee it.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about Veterans Day and the men and women who serve and continue to serve in Congress. We're doing a lot of episodes this whole week with members of Congress, members of the Senate who have served in the military and continue to serve their country. I wanted to talk to you about your service. Why did you decide to serve in the military, and how did you pick the Marine Corps?
Well, look, I don't want to get in trouble here. I love all the services, right? But, the Marine Corps has a reputation of being probably the best military force in the world, not just in America, and a commitment to excellence, challenges, ready when the rest of the country isn't ready. That's been our heritage for over 200 years. So all those reasons, I love being a U.S. Marine. And, I'm still in. I'm the only member of the Senate still serving. And, boy, it really helps me with my day job, as I say. But, yeah, I love the Marine Corps. I love everything it stands for.
Now, have you ever, I asked a member of Congress this the other day, who's a retired general officer, And he actually got to testify as to the House Armed Services Committee, and now he serves on the House Armed Services Committee. Did you ever get the opportunity before you served in Congress to testify before Congress?
I did as the Commissioner of Natural Resources and Energy for Alaska, but never as a U.S. Marine. I'm a grunt. I'm an infantry officer, recon officer, and I'm sure the rarefied air of Congress wasn't what they were looking for in a Marine infantry officer and recon officer. So I never had the opportunity to do that as a Marine, but as a energy minister for Alaska, certainly a number of times, because our state's so important for America's energy and in a lot of ways energy security and national security.
Yeah, no question about it. What was it like adjusting when you got into the Marine Corps? Give us your thoughts on adjusting to life as a Marine.
Well, everybody has their moments, right? My officer candidate's OCS experience was, a little challenging, like everybody, but I think they want to make sure they make it that way. The one story I always say, and this is actually a true story, so I went to officer candidate school. The Marine Corps then has what's called the basic school. That's one of the many things that makes the Marine Corps unique. That's the basic officer course. It's about 7 months, and that's where they train everybody to be an infantry officer. It doesn't matter, you're going to be a pilot, a lawyer, a logistician. Everybody goes to the basic school. So it really grounds the officer corps and the Marine Corps into a common purpose. You spend, almost 7 months with your fellow officers. Then you go to your MOS school, and my MOS school was actually infantry. So did 3 more months at the infantry officer course, which was a really good school, really hard school. You're being trained to be a Marine infantry officer. And, one kind of shocker, I think it was more of a shocker for my wife than for me. I was doing this, and my wife and I we were engaged, and we were getting ready to get married up in Fairbanks, Alaska. The IOC infantry officer course is in Quantico, Virginia. And, it was really hardcore training. You're in the field the whole time doing live fire weapons. And I kept going to my superior officers, hey, sir, I just need 1 day off. I got to fly up to Alaska, get married, come back, and they were ignoring me. And literally it was kind of the week of my wedding. And I finally go to this captain. I said, sir, I have to have this Friday off so I could fly up to Fairbanks and get married to my wife, my fiance. And sir, you guys haven't granted me the day of leave yet. And it's going to be really hard for my wife to get married without me in Fairbanks. This captain, I swear to God, he said this. He looked at me and goes, Lieutenant Sullivan, if the Marine Corps wanted you to have a wife, we would have issued you one, right? So I'm like, oh shit, I'm not gonna go get married in Fairbanks. So they literally gave me 1 day off to hustle up all the way to Fairbanks from Quantico, Virginia. Got married on Saturday, had to hustle back, and I was in the field Monday morning. And I won't bore you with details. That week-long field exercise, they pounded the living daylights out of me, and they made it clear that they were taking it out of me because I had the audacity to go get married to a beautiful woman in Alaska. So anyways, I told my wife, welcome to the Corps. No honeymoon, no nothing. It was back to hardcore training. But it was all good. We can laugh about it now.
That's quite a story. I imagine your wife would not have understood if you just didn't show up.
My wife's been a great Marine wife, even to this day. And this is actually an important point, for Veterans Day. We celebrate our veterans, but what I always say is, look, it's really important to celebrate families. And I've told my wife, we have 3 daughters, my wife Julie and I, and I've always said to them, look, you might not be wearing a uniform of the United States military, but you are a family member, you are sacrificing, you are serving. And in a lot of ways, this can be tougher. You get deployed, you're very focused on your mission. It's the people at home who are worried and wondering, they read about a helicopter crash. Is my husband on that? So, we always got to remember the families when we talk about veterans and Veterans Day.
Yeah, we sure do. My wife is an Army brat, and I always talk to her about that. Moving And I think the families make such a sacrifice. And as you mentioned, the service member themselves, they go to the next duty station and they have a job waiting for them. They have tasks.
Correct.
It's the spouse and the kids that have to hang the pictures on the wall and get everything put away and find the new schools and all of that. So no doubt about it.
You talk to families, right? Have been in 20, 25, 30 years. They'll have made 13 moves, right? I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Really a huge sacrifice. And that's not including, when they've deployed to combat zones. So big sacrifice. We always got to remember the families.
Yeah, no question. Now, you worked at the White House. You worked at the State Department before you became Attorney General. And Alaska is unique, not unique, but it's one of, I think, two states, Alaska and Wyoming. The governor appoints the Attorney General rather
Correct.
than the elected position. But you were appointed Attorney General of Alaska. What made you want to run for the U.S. Senate?
Well, that's a great question because you're right. I had never run for office before I ran for the U.S. Senate. So I had been Attorney General that you mentioned. That's appointed by the governor, confirmed by the legislature. So kind of like the federal system. And then I got asked by our governor when he won his reelection to move from the Attorney General job to the Commissioner of Natural Resources and Energy. And in Alaska, that's the big cabinet job. But same thing, you got to get confirmed by the legislature, but it's not an elected office. So I threw my hat in the ring in 2014. To be perfectly honest, it's somewhat analogous to what's going on now. We had a federal government in the Biden administration, in the Obama administration, that was crushing Alaska, right, in terms of shutting down our resources, shutting down our ability to develop our economy, shutting down our ability to develop natural resources for America. And that, of course, hurt Alaska, but it was really bad for the country, just like the Biden administration is doing now to Alaska. And then you might remember this was second term of Obama. They cut defense spending by 25%. 25%. I was, still in the reserves at that time. I had gotten recalled to go to Afghanistan. I was commanding or XO of an anti-terrorism unit that was kind of based in Alaska but nationwide. And, I saw direct impact on our military and readiness with the federal government crushing the military and the families. And to be honest, I don't want to be too political here, but I thought the incumbent Democrat senator who was representing Alaska on these issues in particular was very weak and did not fight the Obama administration the way they needed to be fought for Alaska, for energy security for America, for national security for America, for our military families. So that is what motivated me. I had never run for dog catcher, right? But when you throw your hat in the ring, I think for the right reasons that are a big conviction that is authentic, what you really believe, then, I think that's the best way to get involved in elected office. And that's the way I did.
Right. Well, now you're a colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve currently.
Correct.
And explain how that kind of impacts your duties as a senator, how it helps you with the policy decisions that you make.
It really helps me. And, I'm plugged in to the troops. I'm a senior colonel. My billet right now is for the military members listening and watching. I'm a individual mobilization detachment. So it's a augmenting an active duty force, essentially, in this billet. And I'm the chief of staff on the reserve side to the Marine Forces Pacific Command commander. So that's the 3-star Marine general in charge of kind of the warfighting elements, the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force and the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force. So that's about 2/3 of the U.S. Marine Corps. And that's under the Indo-PACOM commander, Admiral Aquilino. So where all the action is, Taiwan war planning, Indo-PACOM war planning, South China Sea war planning. That's part of my duty. And so it's really helpful when you have the admirals and generals coming in for the Armed Services Committee, I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and I'm respectful, but they can't pull a lot of BS on me just because I'm doing it, and I do probably about 24, 25 days a year, so it's a lot of time on the reserve side. And for me, it's kind of interesting, Jeff, because it's like bookends to my career. This is probably the last bill that I'll have. My first deployment as a U.S. Marine was to the South China Sea, Taiwan Strait. Some people might remember that was a time of high tension, 1995 and 96. That's now referred to as the Third Taiwan Strait Crisis. The Chinese People's Liberation Army was threatening to invade Taiwan. They were shooting missiles over Taiwan. They moved the whole PLA up to the Taiwan Strait. And President Clinton, to his credit, sent 2 carrier strike groups and a Marine Amphibious Ready Group. I was an infantry officer on that Marine Amphibious Ready Group. We were, no kidding, in the Taiwan Strait, telling the Chinese, like, hey, don't even think about it today. If you do it, you're going to be toast. Your amphibious invasion force will be at the bottom of the ocean. And so now I'm back out, kind of bookends of my career, doing it again out in that region. So it really helps my day job in terms of national security issues and just knowing, right? I know these officers, I know these troops. When you have, members kind of ripping into them, oh, they're not warriors and things like that. That's not right. This is the most combat tested, combat experienced generation of military officers since World War II, and I'm proud to serve alongside them.
Now, I do have to ask, because I think, the military is a hierarchy, and it's a system of rank. So you're a U.S. Senator, but you're also a colonel. Now you rank a little higher as a civilian U.S. Senator than you would be a colonel in the military. Do you ever feel like you get treated a little bit differently because of that?
Well, look, it's a great question because let's face it, it can be a little awkward, right?
Sure, right.
I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I do rigorous oversight of the generals and admirals and the secretaries of the Army and secretaries of the Navy, of the Secretary of Defense, and I take that civilian oversight capacity and obligation very seriously, including, I'm not afraid to rip into admirals and generals or secretaries of the Navy or who I think are not being straight with the committee and things like that. But then at the same time, you put your uniform on, you're a colonel. I mean, the Secretary of the Navy or a 4-star Marine general is way above you, right? So it can be awkward. I think everybody kind of deals with it in their own way. But again, it helps me. And I think most members in the senior ranks of the Pentagon respect it. Hey, here's a senator. He's a senior colonel. He knows what he's talking about. Right. Is there some resentment occasionally or some a little bit like, we're not digging this? I'm sure that's the case. And, they just got to deal with it. And so do I. But right. But you're putting your finger on a very good question. Yeah. Occasionally it can be a little bit awkward, right? Sure. It can be a little bit awkward.
And conversely, I mean, there's got to be a few Marines, right? Some of the enlisted Marines who, like, when you walk past, you're a colonel, and then one of them's like, well, dude, that guy's a senator. I mean, do you think that's got to happen too, a little bit?
Well, the Marine Corps is a small family, right? And, whether you're a Lance Corporal, PFC, you're serving your country in the Marine Corps, I respect those young men and women. And I think it goes both ways. So, we do. I think Marines know that I certainly, I look out for all the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard. And I think the Marine Corps enlisted men and women know that they got a senator from Alaska who pays particular attention to what the hell's going on in the Marine Corps and has their back. And I think, going into Veterans Day, that's really important for people to know and trust in that element.
Right. Okay. So one other question along these lines is, have you ever had someone come up to you? Because obviously you do constituent service and things like that as a senator for Alaska, but have you ever had someone in the Marine Corps come up and say, Senator, I've just got to tell you about this. We got to get this fixed. Have you ever had that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I see things when I'm on Marine Corps duty that, I'll take back and say,
Right.
geez, we got to fix that. But it kind of goes both ways. I'll never forget when I first got elected, I was lieutenant colonel. I was commanding what's called an Anglico unit. It's kind of an elite airborne recon type unit that the Marines deploy in small teams, not with other Marine units, but with Army units, foreign armies, and they're like specialists at calling in supporting arms. So naval gunfire, fixed wing aircraft, artillery, and they're airborne, these units. So it's a great unit. So I was a battalion commander for a 6 Anglico. And I got elected, and, I've been in maybe a couple of weeks, and I meet with the commandant of the Marine Corps. And in the first meeting, he refers to me as sir, right? And I'm kind of like, you talking to me? It's a 4-star general calling me sir,
Yeah.
right? And I'm a lieutenant colonel. And the commandant, in the Marine Corps, the commandant is kind of viewed like the Pope, right? A god. So I was a little strange. Seriously, I was kind of looking at him like, who's he talking about? And then I realized he was referring to me as sir because I was a senator, and
Right.
it was the civilian oversight, which of course makes our country unique and our military unique. But it was a little awkward. I will admit that.
Oh, that's an amazing story. It's a great story. Well, Senator, I want to thank you for your time today and for joining us on the podcast. But most importantly, thanks for your service to our country through the Marine Corps. Thanks to your service to our country through the United States Senate. And thanks for being such a great policy champion. I know Americans for Prosperity really values you and the relationship that we have with you and just all the good work that you do.
Well, Jeff, thank you. And I love the work Americans for Prosperity does. They have a giant influence and a positive influence, not just in Alaska, but throughout our entire country. So to you and your podcast and all the great work you're doing and everybody tuning in, thank you. And thanks for reaching out, especially on Veterans Day, upcoming weekend. Like I said, heading home, Alaska, more vets per capita than any state in the country. We really honor that. But you're honoring all our veterans too. And American for Prosperity does that time and time again. So I want to thank you guys as well. So hope you have a great Veterans weekend. And thanks for all your great work.
All right. Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right. It's so great to have Senator Dan Sullivan from the amazing state of Alaska. I go there all the time. If you haven't been to Alaska, you need to make a trip to Alaska. It's just a spectacular place. Senator Dan Sullivan serving America through his service in the military and in the United States Congress, the U.S. Senate. Thanks to him for his leadership, for being such a great policy champion. We enjoyed having him on the show. Remember, liberty and freedom, they're precious. Go out there, defend liberty and freedom, and thank veterans for doing that for us as well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.